Hey, 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 Nicole Roberts Jones here, and welcome to this episode of the Meaningful Work Podcast. My goal in this podcast is to bridge your work to all that gives your life meaning. I want you to understand that God intended for you to live a life full of meaning and fulfillment. And since work takes up 80% of that time, it's important that we master the meaning in our work. And so I'm starting a new series today. Now, this is the second series of our 2026 season. Those of you that might be watching it after it goes live. So listen, 2026, a reminder, I marked as a year of ambition. So if you're going to be ambitious, you have a choice. You can either shift or blend in. And that is what this conversation is about. It's a call to shift or blend in. See, God never intended for you to settle. And for many of you, you are unknowingly settling. So we're going to talk about how to break free from that. Or maybe you are unconsciously staying in comfort and you deliberately need to be excellent. Come on, somebody. Or we're going to wake up what's holding you back from that next level of your leadership. That is what this series is about. Again, a call. You either going to shift or blend in. And God never intended you to blend in. It makes me think of those of you that have seen that movie, not Ghost, Dirty Dancing. And he said, nobody puts baby in the corner. See, when you sit in that corner, you blending in. And God created us to shift, to subdue. Now, those of you that have been here with me since the beginning of this podcast, you know that season one, I really focused in on meaning and purpose. And part of that, I share with you the mandate that God gave me years ago, which is this Bible verse, Genesis 1:28, that says that God blessed them and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over every living thing that moves on the earth. Now, those of you that are watching on YouTube, you see slides. And if you're not on YouTube, come on over. nrjnetwork.com is where you come watch. Listen, anytime I'm live with you, just me and you, I'm going to have slides. Because I'm not coming for who you already are. Y'all know what I'm getting ready to say. I'm coming for who you have not yet become. And can I tell you a secret, y'all, before I go in on this? Can I tell you a secret? I want you to realize that I have not yet arrived. So the things I teach you on these episodes are things that I learned, and some of them I'm still learning. This one, listen, I've been to counseling for years over this one. You're going to hear about it. I'm going to tell you all my insight. But this is one thing that I have really, really had to hone in on. I'll tell you more about that. So I want to just out myself. I don't want you guys to think, oh, Nicole has every answer. I don't. But what I am someone that is willing to learn the lesson. And really, sometimes I realize God teaches me the lesson so then I can share what I've learned, what I'm implementing, what I'm trying out. So you're going to see, especially in this episode, and by the way, this is a 3-part series. Each part you will need in order to work toward mastery. I'm trying to master it too, y'all. Okay. So again, God gave me this mandate years ago, and he told me that all of us are called to be fruitful and multiply. Now, those of you that were here with me in season one, you heard this story. When God first dropped this in my spirit, I thought God was trying to tell me to have a baby. This is in 2018, I think it was, and I was 48 years old. And I'm like, hold on, wait a minute, Lord. I ain't trying to be disobedient, but 48 for real, you want me to have a baby? That's not what God was showing me. What he was beginning to show me is how he gifted each of us a unique and special way. If you want to go into that, I'll put in the show notes that episode from season one, because I'm not going to go into that, but it really is a call to purpose and why you're here. That's to be fruitful and multiply. What I want to focus in on here in this episode is where this Bible verse says, fill the earth and subdue it. Listen, Tony Evans' study Bible says it like this. God handed over responsibility to us so that we would govern and rule and steward his world for him. I'm going to say that one more time for the people in the back. God handed over responsibility to us so that we would govern and rule and steward his world for him. That's the call to subdue. And subduing does not mean blend in. Come on, somebody, right? Sorry, I'm getting excited on my own self. I'm trying to keep myself calm. I'm getting excited. Listen. So if you're going to govern and rule, you've got to first govern and rule you. You know what they say when you get on the airplane? Put your mask on first before you put on anybody else's mask. So a lot of the conversations we're going to have this season is about putting on your mask. Because how do you lead anybody if you're not leading yourself? See, this is the leadership skill no one teaches you about, and it's self awareness. It's really emotional intelligence. Okay. So, what is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence. Okay. And really, what I'm going to talk to you about is emotional intelligence as a career accelerator. This is the piece that nobody talks about, y'all. And those of you that are watching my screen, don't you love my little picture of a Bentley? Because listen, God did not create you to be a Toyota, a Camry, none of that. He created you to be a Bentley. A Bentley never goes on sale. And many of you are discounting your brilliance. You're blending in when you should be standing out. And so this is a call for you to make that shift because I'm not here for you to continue to blend in. So, with that said, let's talk about what is emotional intelligence. So, emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize, understand, manage, and effectively use emotions, both your own and those of others. So, in this series, well, let me just say this before I say that part. There is IQ and EQ, which is your emotional intelligence. Many of us focus on how smart we are, but we leave out. And I love the conversation that I had with Jennifer Lamar talking about how important people are on your team. So, this is the piece that's going to help you begin to position yourself the right way, to make the right decisions, to really foster other leaders on your team, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So, listen, leaders who have high EI, emotional intelligence, this is emotional intelligence in leadership and why it matters. Listen, you handle conflict well, and you really handle conflict with wisdom. Gonna give you a good example of that in episode 2. My favorite girl, Esther, I'm gonna talk about her in episode 2 more so. And you create psychologically safe environments. Listen, when your team feels safe, it makes a difference in how they show up. And the way you make them feel safe is through your emotional intelligence. It also helps in your own career. Listen, this is helps you with your promotions. It helps you collaborate better with team. It helps you listen. It speaks to your executive presence. And people are watching you. You never get a second chance to make a first impression, and everything you do, there you are. This also helps with resilience during change. And aren't we in a time right now where there's so much change happening around us, having to lay people off and make shifts in your division on your team? And some of you may be laid off and you're looking for your next role. So emotional intelligence really does speak to that. And then even in your personal life, it helps you communicate better in your relationships. It helps you resolve conflict sooner, quicker, faster. Helps you manage stress. It really does speak to your overall well-being. So my goal in everything I'm going to talk about in part 1, 2, and 3 is this Bible verse, 2 Corinthians 13:5, that says, examine yourself as to whether you are in the faith. Test yourself. Do you know yourself that Jesus is in you, unless indeed you are disqualified? Now, the thing I love about this, and let me look it up in Tony Evans real quick. I forgot to open my Bible up to this section. Hopefully I have I do. Yay. Have a marker here. Listen, this testing was not for the purpose of determining whether they were saved. Hear this. This testing was not for the purpose of determining whether they were saved. Paul was confident that they had experienced God's saving grace. Instead, he wants them to examine whether Christ's abiding presence was operating through them. I'm going to say that last part one more time because that's the important part. Paul, in this Bible verse, wants them, the church at Corinth, who he was talking to examine whether Christ's abiding presence was operating through them. And ultimately, you guys, this is what emotional intelligence is about. So you can check yourself before you wreck yourself. Those of you that are thinking, what's she talking about? Make me feel old. Yeah, whatever. So this is a concept that Goldman wrote years ago. Emotional intelligence has 5 key components. So in this series, I'm going to walk through all 5. So in this first part, I'm going to walk through the first 2. Super important. So the first one is self-awareness. If you're going to check yourself, if you're going to be the leader that God has called and crafted you to be, if you're going to subdue the area that God has called you to, you've got to first be self-aware. So what do I mean by self-aware? Listen, I know for years there were things that would happen to me in my role as a leader, especially listen, when I first graduated my graduate degree, let me keep it all the way real. And I was 28 years old, and I was the now the deputy director of a division at my job, and at the time I worked in nonprofit. And I realized that listen, I was getting ready to be everybody's boss, and I was 28 years old. I realized I had to show up like a boss. This is what I was thinking, my own little psychology, right? So instead of wearing the jeans and t-shirt that many people wear when you work in nonprofits, I wore a suit every day to work because I had to show up. But it was bigger than just looking at what I look like on the outside. I had to begin to show up for people on the inside. And what I realized, if I keep it all the way real, I grew up in an abusive household. And so me and I'm from the hood. So there's two things that are inside of me automatically. Many of you will not meet her because I've been working on her. But one is rage. Automatically, anger comes up in me. And so I'm going to share in these 2 episodes, 3 episodes, the tools that I've used that I got from a counselor. I'm going to share the first part in a second. But the second thing that comes up is when I'm enraged, is I could used to be able to cuss you out. Well, I still could. I just don't do it anymore. And tell you about yourself and all the things because that was the Nicole that I thought I had to be. See, I was blending in. I was like everybody else. When again, if you look at this whole conversation, Paul has happened to the church at Corinth. If you look at even Genesis 1:28, what God is calling us to do is to be just like he would be. Remember that campaign, What Would Jesus Do? WWJD? It's thinking about what would Jesus do in this situation? How can I shift what's coming up for me to honor the dignity of the human spirit of the other person? That's what I begin to have to do for my own self and my own journey. Because automatic rage comes in me, grew up around it, still comes, it doesn't go away. But now I'm gonna show you the exercise that I do, but I know what it feels like. I know where it shows up in my body, and I know how to shut her down. Because baby, once I let her loose, she is on and popping. I can't pull her back. But this comes with you being self-aware. I'm sharing that with you because as a manager at 28, and many of you could be 48, you could be 58 and still be dealing with this. I don't want you to think that because I was 28 and I started noticing this. Listen, I started also noticing that my relationships, I kept dating the same man over and over. And I thought, if I'm gonna date a different man, I need to go get some counseling. Come on, somebody. But it was showing up not just in my relationships, it was showing up in me at work. What I realized is I had to do some things different. And that's exactly what I'm getting ready to walk you through. And the first thing that I began to understand was an exercise that my first counselor shared with me, which is the emotion wheel map. Now I will put this down in the show notes. You can click and get the emotion wheel map. Now, what it is, it's a tool that helps identify and articulate your feelings by categorizing emotion into core, nuanced variations. So, what does that mean? Okay, so those of you that can see that on the screen, and when you download it, you'll be able to see it better. But the center says, this is how I feel, and then you find the emotion. Then what happens is if it says angry, you can find all the things that relate to anger, all the things that relate to happy. And I think sometimes we don't stop long enough to identify. So for me, I didn't like being called an angry Black woman because I didn't think I was angry. But what I realize now is things were triggering me and making me feel a certain kind of way, which then led to my reactions. So, what I want to encourage you to do is regularly engage with this wheel, which is what I began to do. And it can support your emotional regulation and help manage complex feelings effectively. Sometimes you're feeling things that you don't understand why. I began to realize that. So, again, I thought I was only getting enraged in relationships. I realized that I had power and control issues. Come on, somebody. And so, therefore, when I was in meetings and I felt like I had to be in control because I'm the boss, that same feeling would come up, but I'm not angry. Why am I feeling that? It was related to me having to be in control, which is an abuse function. Y'all get that? This is my issue. Everybody's different. It took me really sitting with my emotions, get a journal and take this map and take your time with it and sit with what's coming up for you. I'm going to build on it each episode, y'all. But what I began to realize is that if you don't sit with what's happening, then you won't understand. So, again, let me walk you through how to use it. So, start at the center, okay? And then you find what emotion you're dealing with right now. So, you might do this at the end of a day. Maybe you got really angry in a meeting. Maybe somebody on your team got on your last nerve. Or maybe those two things just happened to me. So, you sit with how you feel at the end of the day. Start at the center, and then you find the emotion and see, and then you find all that is related to it. And then the third thing is identify physical sensations. So what's interesting is when I feel enraged, I can feel it in my stomach. So then I realize what it is now. I can feel it in my chest sometimes too. So what's coming up for me? You might say, what's coming up for me? If you're feeling some kind of way in a meeting or there's one colleague that just gets on your nerve, this might be an exercise you can do so you can start to get underneath it again, putting your bag on yourself first. Then what happens is when that trigger happens, so out myself again, I remember, so I'm gonna walk through the rest in a second. One of my best friends I've known since 10th grade. She has known all levels of Nicole. Okay, so I remember after I started doing this exercise, I think we might have been in our 30s now. After doing this exercise and really beginning to get a hold of my emotion and really understanding when it comes up. Now, am I perfect? No, sometimes I let it get the best of me and I say a little something when I'm not supposed to. But when I take the time to really sit with where I am and what's triggering me, then I can stop it. I can have what I call a pause. I'm going to teach you to pause in episode 2. Right now, I just want you to identify your emotions. I want you to become self-aware of what's coming up for you. Especially we as Black women, we're taught to just keep it pushing, keep it pushing. We never stop long enough to identify where we are. So I remember being in a car with my bestie. I'm going to a car wash. And nice, beautiful, hot, sunny day in sunny LA. And I'm from LA, those of you that don't know. And we drive to the car wash. And this man is driving all crazy. And I ignore him. I just keep driving the same speed. And I get to the car wash and I get in line before him. Now, he was trying to get in front of me, but I didn't shift what I was doing. He gets out of his car and knocks on my window. Now, old school Nicole would have rolled the window down and gave him a piece of my mind, like cussed him out. Okay. New school, self-aware, emotionally, tapped in. Nicole took a deep breath. I let him yell. I looked at him and said, "We both go get our car washed today." And I rolled my window up. Now, mind you, he's yelling at me, everything. My friend said, "Who are you? Who are you?" Because she was used to old Nicole, and I think she was ready to have my back. But I realized that if I want something different, you've got to do something different. If you want your life to have a different consequence, if you want a situation to turn out differently, and again, as a leader, if you want your team to behave differently, you want your outcomes to become different, you've got to become different. You can't do that without being self-aware. Just want to tell you that story real quick. So again, you've got to begin to look at what's triggering you. So start at the center, move outward to see what all that's related and begin to show you your triggers. And then identify where it's showing up in your body. I said this already. I said this several times. Identify triggers. Oh, I know what triggers me. I have a person on my team who right now, I promise you, grew up the way I did. The reason I know is because I can see in her behavior and she triggers me. And I have to sit silent. Because the old school Nicole wants to go off on her. And that's what she expects because that's what she deals with probably at home. And so she triggers me so heavily. So because of that, I went and had a separate meeting with her and said, we're on the same team. How can I support you? She started crying. I'm not here to fight you. We're on the same team. Now, mind you, I'm her boss. How can I support you? So first you got to validate and sit with the emotions for yourself first. I'll talk more about how you deal with this with other people in the next episode. But these are really the 5 steps to use this emotional will map. I'm giving you more complex examples because I want you to see how it shows up. And I guarantee you, anytime you're bothered or something doesn't go the way you want, or Anything in between, you're bumping up against an emotion that you just are pushing past, you're not dealing with it. So if you're going to be ambitious and go after the next level of yourself, you can no longer just keep it pushing and not deal with emotions. You got to be self-aware. That's component number one of emotional intelligence, is being self-aware. Component number two, oh, by the way, checking regularly, forgot that step. Point number two, or component number two of emotional intelligence, is motivation. You've got to understand your why. What's your inner drive? Like, why do you work where you work? Why do you do what you do? What's the purpose of your role in your company? I want you to realize that every company, every role we each play was created as an answer to a problem. When you begin to realize your role in that continuum, and then you realize what emotion is keeping you away from effectively doing that role or effectively leading your team to do that role. Now I know I've told this story in another episode, but I've got to tell it here. Again, my 28-year-old new boss at this company. And by the way, I had just started counseling that same year. So all my stuff was coming out, right? And so I remember one of my best trainers came in my office every week for supervision, and she'd be crying. And I tell her, go cry and work that out and come back when you're done. I did that for months and months and months. She came in every single time. What I didn't realize is she obviously felt safe with me. For her to be able to cry, and see, I'm not a crier. Well, I do cry, but I'm not crying at work. Right? But that's me. It wasn't until I said, so tell me what's coming up for you. And I realized that part of what was happening for me was a trigger, y'all. Like, why is it bothering me that she's crying? And I began to be able to peel that back to my background, because I wasn't allowed to have emotion when you grow up in an abusive household. So does that mean that I'm extra super emotional now? No. But I now can tap into that safe space that I can be for others who are. When I began to let her pour and talk, and let me explain to you that woman's training started to, people were like, what did you do? I just gave her the safe space, the realm of reflection that she needed as her supervisor, instead of blocking what was coming up for me. Y'all get that? And I think sometimes we don't sit and become self aware to understand that things are coming up for you for a reason and resolve it. I went to counseling. Most of you all, if you have health insurance, I highly suggest it. Have a counselor on speed dial. Sure do, to this day, because listen, I work with her so long. She's like, girl, you good. Just call me now when you need something. I'm not good. I'm always going to be working through things, but now I have tools. These are the tools I share with you in the episodes of this podcast. In addition to more schooling, certifications I've been through, et cetera, et cetera. But ultimately, you've got to understand your motivation. Like, why do you want it? Why did you want your job? Why do you do what you do at your job? What's the result of it? What's your big goal for 2026 or 2027? All of that speaks to your motivation behind what you do, so that when you're being triggered, you can say, okay, am I going to shift, or am I going to blend in? Am I going to shift and do the work that I can do and sit with what's coming up for me, so that I can shift how I show up? I can shift the continence of my team. I can shift the deliverables that we execute because I'm shifting who I am. Or am I going to blend in and be like everybody else? He blending in for me was to be that same girl that cussed everybody out. Now, I can cuss you out good too, y'all. What's so funny is as I started to successfully shift that part of me, I can still read you though. And I remember my pastor saying to me years later that this is me using that gift for good. He said, you know what? You read people so well that person could be bleeding and wouldn't know it today, walking down the street. Because what I would do was try to manage who they are and love them through it, and then tell them, okay, and these are the 3 things you've got to do. Until you do that, don't come back here. And this was at a mega church where people were taking advantage of our pastor, and I had to put them in their place. But I did it with love, and I did it while honoring who they were. That's what our pastor would say. You didn't cut them up, and they don't even realize today down the street, because you do it with such love. But it took me really working through, and it's still doing. So those of you that see me, if you see me in a meeting, I'm being quiet, I guarantee you that I'm triggered. If you see me in a meeting and I'm not talking, because y'all know I can talk, I guarantee you I'm triggered. One of my emotions is flaring. I'm trying to calm her down because there's a whole nother her that comes forward if I don't. And so here's my homework for you is to take your emotional, let me go back to our will and really sit with this. Again, I'm going to give you the 6 steps. 1, start at the center. 2, move outward to see all that is related to that emotion you're feeling in that moment. Identify physical sensations because it shows up in your body. I guarantee you. Sometimes you have a headache and you don't realize that your headache is because of an emotion you're dealing with. I remember I had a client that kept having migraines, and when she finally figured out her emotion that was connected to that, her migraine stopped. Identify what triggers you. There's certain things that make them come up automatically. Validate and sit with the emotion. I want you to say, I shouldn't feel like that. No, don't do that. Understand that God gave us emotions. Emotions aren't a bad thing. It's what we do with it that matters. So when that's coming up for you, so like I use a staff member that I could tell she lives in some kind of chaos, whether it's abuse, whether it's emotional abuse, whatever it is in her family. So what I try to do now is be opposite of that and love her through it. But I have to sit with my emotion to do it first. And then check in with yourself regularly. When you're having a hard day, check in with yourself. When you're feeling some kind of way because so-and-so did such and such, check yourself. When things come up for you, check your emotional IQ. So those are the first 2 steps. I have so much more to give you all, but I want you to sit with this for this week until we get into episode number 2. I'm going to build on it. But for many of you, you probably haven't stopped long enough to even check in with yourself. So if you've been with me since the beginning of this podcast, you know that I suggested that you have do, have time, right? So listen, we're human beings, but we're not. We're really human doings because we focus on what do we need to do and we never sit in our being. That being time for me is Jesus time, but it's also time for me to check myself before I break myself because trust, I could break myself and so could you. So I want to encourage you to sit with what's coming up for you when you're feeling some kind of way. Like, why am I feeling like this? What emotion or what's triggering this? And then start to identify the emotions that are coming up for you so that you can begin to do the work to shift because God did not create you to blend in. Now, as I wrap this episode, I look forward to hearing your thoughts, your questions, your comments. I look forward to hearing, is this working for you? I look forward to all the things because listen, I'm not here for me, y'all. I'm here for you. And so I want to hear your insight, your comments, your takeaways so that I can build on it in our next episode, right? So with that said, it's my honor and my privilege to always be here to pour into you. And as 2026 is our year of ambition, it's time for you to shift. And it starts with you getting your emotional IQ in check. All right. So with that said, I look forward to seeing you in our next episode. Subscribe, share to everybody else around you about it because they might need help with their emotional intelligence as well. All right. I'll see y'all for part 2 on the next one. Bye, y'all.